Ubumi, Uvagut atiga Margaret Nixon Elias, Quyanaq Qaikaffi Pangma Nunaptingnun. Hello, good afternoon, welcome. My name is Margaret Nixon Elias, and welcome to Where We Live Now. Today, on today's show, we have another returning guest, and we have Jason Nasogaluak. Can you say your name the proper way? Sorry.
Jason Nasogaluak.
Yes, that's. How are you?
Good, good.
So whenever I have someone on the show, I always ask them if they could introduce themselves the exact same way they would as if they were talking to an elder.
Okay.
So just letting everybody who's watching know your name, where you're from, where you're originally from, and who your family is.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jason Nasogaluak. I'm Inuit. I'm originally from Sachs Harbour, Banks Island. My family moved to Tuk in 1986, where our family's traditionally from. And I moved here for work some 15
moved here
years
to
ago.
Inuvik.
Yeah.
Yes. And tell me a bit about yourself. I know that you're a great storyteller. I know that you've spent a lot of time learning stories, listening to elders.
Yeah, you know, growing up, we're hearing stories that a lot of kids usually don't listen to or play around. I mean, as soon as I hear my parents or other elders tell stories, I'll just stop what I was doing and I'll just go sit between them and just listen to their stories. You know?
Yeah.
So a lot of them, because I like this, a lot of them were not about sad stories of things, but a lot of them were comical and a lot of them were really, you know, about things that could have happened in their lives, you know. Yeah, that really fascinated me when I was young.
Yeah. What if we could just jump into the storytelling? But like, what was your favorite way to hear stories? Like, was it like through your grandparents or your parents?
Well, my parents, their main language is pretty much fluent in Wellington, and they'll sit there, and my parents too enjoyed listening to stories from elders and their friends, you know, at the time in Sachs Harbour, and I'll sit there and we'll just sit there and have tea and listen to stories, and you know, a lot of them. My dad, he was a comical person, and they'll talk about this stuff that happened in their lives, you know, doing hunting trips, doing, you know, fishing trips, and a lot of things like that, you know. And I was always like, my dad will pay attention to stories like that, and when I got out of finished school, got out left residential school, Growley Hall. I went 1 year upgrading at Archaeology in Tuk. And one of our projects was get stories from elders, and and so they assigned me these elders, and right away I said, okay, I want to hear. They start telling stories. They asked, what do you want to hear? I said, comical stories or ghost stories, and they're just all this fascinated. And we start talking, how weather changes and all that, At the time, this was 24 years ago, 25 years ago.
So like the 2000s?
Yeah, no, 30-something years ago. This is 35 years ago. Oh, geez, it's already, 1991.
Yeah.
That area. Sorry.
Okay. So you heard the really, really good stories from the elders.
The old stories, yeah.
Yeah.
The old stories. I remember one when I was a kid, like I was talking earlier, that this couple flew to Sachs Harbour with these archaeologists. They flew to Banks Island, Sachs Harbour, and they rented this small, like a 15-foot aluminum boat. They had a couple of these, like small kickers, 122 kickers, and then as soon as the elders noticed what they were trying to use and what their why they were in Sachs Harbour, they said they wanted to do archaeological work along the coastline towards Nelson Head area. So my dad and elders like my uncle David and Nasogaluak, and then Andy Carpenter said, okay, we could give you a big 18-foot long or 20-foot boat to handle what are you carrying. So they said, no, we're good. And they, even though the elders saying it's kind of dangerous, they still hauled up this little boat, and they overhauled this little 15-foot boat, and they left along. And at that time, this was probably 1975, 76 in that area. I remember watching this little boat head out, and at that time there was ice floating all over. This was end of July, I didn't believe there was actually mosquitoes around when I moved to when I went to Tuk and traveled there. I didn't know there was mosquitoes so early in July when I finally went to Tuk.
Yeah.
Because in Sachs you get a little bit breezy. There's no mosquitoes.
There's no mosquitoes.
It's like fall time.
Yeah.
So I only finally started really putting on mosquito dope when I started living along, in Tuk area. So anyways, we watched this boat leave, and Barb, her name was Barb, I believe, and she stayed with my uncle and auntie, and they were supposed to be gone 4 or 5 days. Anyways, my dad and a couple of elders said, okay, we'll wait on them to make sure everything's okay. Anyways, my dad went out, I believe, muskox or caribou hunting up in the land with his truck. You're able to travel around the truck back then, and probably still do today. Today you got quads. That time there was no 3-wheelers or quads in the 70s. So we were able to travel around the trucks, and you could travel as far as you want. So my dad and uncles were gone. When they got back to Sachs, Barb was kind of worried, saying her husband and the rest of the archaeologists, they're overdue. So I remember my dad and uncles and a few other locals loading up their boats and preparing to go look for them. So my dad said as soon as they got out in the ice, they're traveling among ice. My dad said he'd start noticing debris, started noticing stuff floating on the ice, in the water. So they knew something was bad happened there. So they all stopped together at boats and said they're going to spread out and do a search. At that time, there was no way to call for planes or anything like that. There's no way to call. There's no choppers radios even that time in the 70s. So, anyways, my dad said they started looking at binoculars. My dad said he noticed in the distance they looked like Uvaguts or, on ice. My dad said, that's them. So they rushed to them right away. These guys were on ice.
Oh, my goodness.
they're laying on ice, sitting on ice. They had nothing there, just frozen, cold. So they got to them, and they rescued them and changed. They got my dad. They got like changed their clothes and all that, and said what happened. Said when they're coming, they couldn't lift when they're traveling on the ice, and said got a little windy. And they said they started trying to go faster with the kickers, and they couldn't lift up. Said when they're going down, they've been hitting a little piece of ice. Said as soon as it hit the ice, the boat sank.
Oh my goodness.
So they said they had no choice to swim to the nearest iceberg.
Yeah.
So that's the only way they survived. If there was no ice around, they would have probably perished. So when they got back, they were well taken care of. They sent them to Inuvik to make sure they're okay. What they kind of worried was they lost a lot of their artifacts that they gathered. And some of the elders say that, try not to, don't touch that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's like respect.
Respect, stuff like that. But try not to let them know that it's not what happens. It's not over the artifacts you touch. It's it's being not safe. Even though we told you don't overhaul that little boat. Yeah. So I remember they sent letters to my parents back. They were doing good after that, but I was probably only 5 or 6, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. I know that there's a way to respectfully take artifacts, like stuff on the land. There's a respectful way to do it. I was personally always taught to just leave it. It's there.
Well, like I said today, our coastlines are eroding. And I moved, when my family moved to Tuck in the 80s, my dad showed me all these hunting areas along the coastline, all the places we hunt, and every creek, every bay, every little point, they all got Inuit names. So he showed me all his names. I did not learn much of my language, but my dad wanted me to know all the Inuit names. Yeah. Because of, at the time in the 90s, we had trappers radios now. We could we could talk with everybody in our region. And so I noticed right away, hunting not far from my dad, I noticed there was a grave on this hill. And I noticed on a little ways there's another grave along the coastline. So it was, I was wondering what's happening? How come it's like this? So my dad and my uncles explained to me that there was no after Qaikaffi, the pandemic, there was no Tuktoyaktuk at that time. They were all just living in their own little areas, hunting areas, and they'll move. And they'll gather for festivities, but they'll hunt in these coastlines.
Like nomadic?
Yeah, well, that was our great-grandfathers and that, late 1800s, only mid-1900s, not long ago.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Well, it may be 100 years ago, but to us, that's not long ago.
No.
So when they passed, the elders passed, they buried them where their favorite hunting areas.
Oh, that's nice.
I used to hunt in that area. After a while, my parents would go to Husky Lake. This happened in 1991. And I was camping by myself at my favorite hunting place along the coast, a little creek called mouth of Quyanaq. And a little ways past me, there was another place called Uvagut. And a lot of families camped there. Like Shepherd and Moona Felix family, Bill and Lucy Cockney, big families, a lot of tents. And I hunted, must be about 15 minutes closer to town at a little point, like a mouth of Quyanaq. And I have a 7x7 tent, and my parents were in Husky Lake, I remember at the time, and we communicate with 2 trappers radios, So I never put up my aerial for my radio, and anyways, I usually, in the springtime, geese, because the weather gets so warm in the daytime, they don't travel, they don't fly like within 2 to like 6 o'clock at night because the weather's so warm. The only time they fly is middle of the morning, like 5, 6 in the morning. They'll fly till noon when it's cool. Then they'll feed the rest of the day. And this is in May. So I was up early, 5, 6 in the morning. I set up my camp. I didn't put my aerial up, but I had breakfast. And I went to go hunting my blind, which is like 5 minutes away from my tent. And then I went in there, and I noticed when I was done, I got about 50 geese, and I was plucking geese. And when I was done, I put them in the snow, and I noticed that grave. I said, geez, a lot of willows are covering the old wooden fence. I said, I'll grab my snow knife and a little bit of string, and I went there, and I looked at it, and I started cutting the willows, clean that grave, move the fence, clean it all, showing respect, This is not only their hunting land, this is my hunting spot as well. I want, I clean up after myself. I grab all my shells, grab all my stuff, clean up. So I might as well fix up this grave. So I tied the fence back up, put it back up. And that's what I did for a few years. And finally one year I decided to, I noticed she had a wooden stone and the name was fading away. So I grabbed my knife and I started carving into the gray wooden stone, and I started carving my name. This was like, I would say, at the time of 11 in the morning. Geese were still flying, but I wanted to go fix that grave. Anyways, after I was done, I said, boy, I made it real nice, and I was really proud of myself, and I cleaned up the grave, and I was just happy. And then I sat in my skidoo, and I pulled out a thermos, and then all of a sudden I just got the chills. And one time I get chills is I'm getting the flu or whatever, get like a little bit sick or whatever. And I said, oh yeah, okay. I went to tent and I made a real good cup of tea, and I had bannock, and I just started burning up and just getting very sick. So I took all my winter clothes off and I jumped in the blankets. And I remember, oh gee, I said my mother going to call me at noon. Came outside and I looked out and I noticed, oh my goodness, it's quiet out here. Like no more sound. No geese, no ptarmigan, not even cranes making sound in the distance. And
How
I said,
strange.
only that happened, only reason, if that happens, we got bad weather coming.
Yeah.
As the big fog comes, everything is quiet. And at that time, when that happens, if you're close enough to home, it's time to go home.
Time to go home.
Dry up, have a good wash, and wait out the weather. But I noticed the skies were still blue and everything is still clear, and I noticed usually the fog will come from the ocean side, from the east, and I noticed, geez, there's no clouds.
Nothing.
So I looked at binoculars. I could see my Uncle Shepherd and my cousins all standing around in a mirage. I said, gee, they're not leaving. Usually they leave. Everybody leaves. So anyways, I took some Tylenol, and about 11:30 I put the aerial, and usually hear some people at noon, just like at midnight. Everybody,
Like the Trappers radio?
The Trappers radio, yeah. Everybody will communicate, ask how's everything, ask where are you, make sure everybody's okay all over the place. And then there was nothing. So I set up my aerial, and it didn't work. All I hear is just, just nothing. So I all over the direction, and it couldn't work. I couldn't hear nobody.
That's strange.
So anyways, I laid down, and I remember falling asleep. My radio's off. Anyways, I was sleeping and I dozing off. All of a sudden, my radio was on, and I said, oh my goodness, I must have never turned it off. So I tried to talk to my mom. It was 12:30 going to 1. I've been sleeping like an hour. Still, there was nothing. So I went outside, and I thought of going to my uncles and aunties and see if their radio is working, because Shepherd and Muna were the base camp. So anything, because they camp so close to the community, they had the base camp intact as well. So if somebody was happened to get hurt or sick, you called Shepherd Felix, and they'll call the nursery station or the police or any other local hunters that could rescue somebody if something's happening. So anyways, I decided I'd just stay around the camp. there was nothing flying, nothing. So I laid back in bed and I was wondering why it's so quiet. I kept looking at the weather.
Is this morning time?
This was now, it's like 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And it's just quiet. Anyways, I sat in my tent and I was really sick. And I said, gee, maybe that's why I'm touching that grave. But I said, gee, I went out, I'm trying to say I was really trying to be a good person. And I went out and anyways, I didn't know what to do. So I dressed up. I went to that grave and I said, I'm sorry. I won't touch again. I never meant to do anything. While I said that and I sat on my skidoo and I was just going to say the Lord's Prayer. All of a sudden, these bunch of snow geese showed up, like 40 of them right off the ground. It even made me jump. While I was not thinking, I reached for my gun and I realized I left my gun in the tent. I reached for my gun, I hid, and when I looked, there was another bunch of snow geese coming, like just gliding towards my decoys. I rushed to my tent, grabbed my guns and shells, and went straight to the blind. Geese were like this.
Honestly.
Picking up geese, sweating, I had no more jacket on, picking up geese, and I said, oh boy, I feel good, you know? Picking up geese, I felt so good, you know? Well, I said, that Tylenol is good stuff, must be working. And so anyways, I got about 60 geese before it was 7 o'clock, and I put them in a snow to tent, and I decided to go I went on the radio. Now I put on radio, I could hear everybody on radio.
How strange.
And I called my Auntie Muna and she called me and said everything was okay, Jason. Yeah. Said, we just made goose soup, come and eat. I said, yeah, I was going to cook. So I rushed over like 15 minutes away, 10 minutes away. And I said, boy, it was quiet this morning, afternoon. You know, no geese. She said, they started around 9 in the morning. They started flying. They said, we're wondering, how come Jay's not shooting geese?
Nothing coming your way.
My uncle said geese was traveling above the ice. They could see you putting up aerial, and they'll even jump when they see you. They were so close to you.
Yeah.
And I said, I've never seen nothing. And they said they were shooting the whole
time.
10 hours. And I said, I never heard nothing. And they said geese was even startled. They were so close to my tent and so close to me while I was putting up aerial. They were wondering why I'm not sitting there in the blind. And I told Shepherd what I did. And he never got mad. He just talked to me real good. Said, you know, don't touch stuff like that. You know, we not know what they not know what we're doing. You know, we're in Uvagut. That's our land, but we don't do that. You know. I showed today. I hunt today with my son, my boys, and we don't touch graves like that.
No,
we show our respect, even though I was not trying to do anything wrong.
You weren't trying to be disrespectful, yeah.
And I pay respect. You know, I always did. But today there's like 4 feet of bushes over that grave, and you know, I just say a prayer every time I pass because I hunt there yet still today.
Yeah.
Somewhat 35 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So today, my granddad and my dad, Joe Nasogaluak, and my uncle's Nam told me there's graves all along the coast, right from east side, like to McKinley Bay. Right down to the coastline to Kitty. So when I got older, we started traveling with boats now. We started traveling boats to east side to McKinley Bay on Caribou. And we noticed there's a lot of graves on hills. You know, we noticed, I walked around when we were done hunting and I noticed these graves there's graves that were dug in the ground, covered with driftwood. And we noticed that's not in Uvagut or our elders had passed. We see galvanized bowls. There's even one with a revolver.
Wow.
So we know that was the whalers.
Yeah.
Southern whalers back 1900s, you know. So we never touch those, but we see them. You know, we tell our younger generation today that, you know, don't just, you know, you can walk around and look at them. They're out there, but we don't touch them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just part of like our culture is just to like Shepherd taught you, you know, just leave them be if they're resting.
I remember 25 years ago, my cousin made me a mud sled, a real nice mud sled, and I had it for like 5 years. So my dad borrowed it to go out on a polar bear hunt. Anyways, that sled never made it back. So big load he had, traveling through rough ice, and he said he left it. He just brought it to land and left it. Anyways, he got me a new sled, a boggin, and even though I told him you don't have to, but he still got me a boggin. And anyways, years later, I was traveling with Shepherd Felix and Benny, my cousin Benny, his son. We were traveling hunting caribou. This was mid-August with boat. We traveled along the coastline around Kitty. Then we traveled to Hendrickson Island, then to a place called Uvagut Bay, where the old reindeer herders used to have their herd. So while we were there, me and Shepherd walked along the beach, looking at showing me where they had the corrals and where they kept the reindeer, and we noticed this old sled there, and Shepherd said, I probably could tell you what years from. Oh, we got excited, how they made sleds back then. When we got closer, it was my cousin Betty who made that sled, said, hey, Jay, that's a sled I made for you. I said, oh, my God. We thought it was an old sled, Shepherd was going to tell us it was from like 80 years ago or something, but it's not from last year. That's my sled.
Was it weathered? Why you thought it was old?
Because it was flat. What happened was the legs been dropping on a mud sled, so it dropped and it was flat. And among the bushes, it looked like very old. And we got very excited because Shepherd is going to show us how they made the sled back in mid-1920s or something. Oh, we got excited. When he got closer, Betty said, that's my sled I made for you, Jay. Said, oh, my goodness. What? Yeah.
You guys must have sure had to laugh at that. Yeah. The weather, we were talking about it before when you were talking about I didn't get to elaborate. What time of year did you say it was when those people got stuck on the ice?
This was in July?
It was in July?
Yeah.
So Sachs Harbour, Banks Island used to have ice.
Yeah, used to have ice floating in July, August. We used to hunt seals. There's ice floating everywhere. So even though it used to be kind of windy, there used to be so much ice that it was like a flat calm. It's like it was glassy water. We used to hunt seals. And I remember my parents used to get a lot of seals. Everybody gets a lot of seals. They'll use the fat and eat the meat. And it just used everything. And they'll sell hide. My parents would be up 6 a.m. Everybody see people along the beaches working on seals 6 a.m. and flushing seals,
Yeah.
So I used to be just sitting there feeding seagulls and shooting seagulls. And that was a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
We had at the time we had no TV. There was no TV till probably 76, 77, 78. There was no television in Sachs Harbour.
Well, I sat down and did an interview with John Lucas and Senior and Trevor, and he said he remembers people on Banks Island when they would do seal hunting. He said each family could get like 400 seals.
Yep. The whole.
He said it was just everybody was on the water. And
our 20-foot canoe, my dad used to have a green 20-foot canoe, and I could picture 8 seals at a time.
Yeah.
They just go back and forth. And you didn't have to go far out in the ocean to hunt seals. As soon as it's glassy water out there, you could get seals
It's right in the bay.
Right in the, out, not far.
Yeah.
And that was so much fun. We hunt seals. And sometimes I realized at one time there was supposed to be a lot of seals and it was just quiet. There was no seals anywhere.
I wonder why.
So my dad and at the time, Lucas, we gathered together and Wallace said there's probably a walrus around.
Oh.
And when there's a walrus around, there's very few seals. And I was a young kid, and I didn't realize. I said, I didn't think a walrus could be in our waters. But it's so clear water, and my Uncle David and Wallace Lucas would say there's easily coming around Banks Island, Sachs Harbour area. So, anyways, we travel along, and then we seen Uvagut washed up along the beach. So we drove to it. It had 2 holes on its side.
So there was a walrus.
Yeah, there was a walrus in that area.
What year was this?
82, 83.
I'm pretty sure Greg's dad got a walrus in Sachs Harbour.
Yeah, I remember there was actually 2 shot in that time, 82, 83, and then another one in 86, that year we left. So I've been living there at the time 14 years, and first time I ever seen a walrus, in my life.
I would be so scared.
And how dangerous they are to seals and uvaguts, that they stay away from them.
They eat them?
That I do not know. I wish I knew about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that seals are, we found 2 uvaguts with 2 holes in them. That uvaguts are strong.
They're very big.
And to a walrus to put a tusk that wide through its side, that's amazingly strong. I've seen polar bears swimming. I've seen polar bears on icebergs, but I never seen a walrus like that. I remember in.
So you saw the actual walrus, or just the holes?
Well, I seen the 2 that were shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
My uncle Eli and my dad got one. Yeah, and they're so huge, I got pictures of them. I was like 11, 12 years old, so it was amazing to see for me.
Yeah.
But I remember when geese hunting is done in June, we used to travel to Mary Sachs and go pluck our geese there. And there was still, there's still ice. Ice, like the main ice is still connected to land. And I always thought that was that way, right till end of June, I didn't believe how things were when you travel to the mainland, like to talk. So one time I remember my dad was really fascinated. He seen this hauled up seal near a hole. And about 200 yards away, this mother polar bear with her cubs, that cubs are playing around, rolling, and the mother put up her head, and my dad said, watch this. It's that the mother going to notice that seal. Right away, that bear put his head down. Then walked around, he started doing this. My dad said, watch this, he's looking for little pieces of snow drifts. He's going to go to that seal. Sure enough, he started walking real slow. He looked back, the cubs are still rolling around playing, 2 cubs still rolling around playing.
How cute.
Anyways, the mother started getting closer. Now we got about 8 yards away, dropped on its stomach like this, and he started walking with his back legs. And that bear, in the distance, it was doing this to the ice.
How crazy.
And my dad said, that's a big bear. That's a big mother, like 8, 9 foot. And you could barely see it off the ground like this because it was crawling like this. It was sliding. It was sneaking that seal. And it got about 15 feet away, and my seal was still sleeping. So everybody had binoculars. Everybody was watching this thing, and it was out in the ocean, like about 500 yards away. Anyways, the bear got about 10 feet away, and he was just going to get up. Just then, these cubs wondering, where's their mother? Where's the mother? Started running to their mother.
Oh, my
Full out.
goodness.
Started running. Anyways, the mother looked back. She knew what was happening. That mother jumped up full out at the seal. The seal got up and jumped in a hole. Anyways, the cubs got there, all that. Running around the seal. The mother was so mad. Started throwing the cubs around. Grabbing behind
like them. Scolding
like
them.
Like scolding. Started throwing them around,
How interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I'm having like a blank here. But Frank was on the show, and he was telling that he remembers 2 people got a walrus and tuck.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you remember who? Okay, I'm having like
Yeah.
a brain fart, but I'm pretty sure one of them was my dad.
Okay.
Because he was like, I'm having a memory that my dad said that he was the other person when Frank was naming them.
Okay.
Yeah, but they don't usually go around Tuck either. They're
Oh,
not
ours
like
is no.
no.
No. Another story was, back in the 70s, fox prices were very high, so everybody was trapping. So my parents moved, I believe, in '67 to Sachs Harbour because the fur prices were so good. So my mother used to travel with my dad all the time, and me and my brother will have sitters, and here's my mother. The short, like few second story here is my mother said she was with my dad. He was setting his trap. This was edge of Banks Island, way right into their trap line. Mom said there. My dad is setting his trap. She was sitting on her scooter having a smoke. All of a sudden, she looked behind her. These two cubs come running to her. So she goes on her knees and said she was playing with them, rolling around with them. These two mother cubs rolling around with them. She was playing with them. All of a sudden, my dad seen what was happening. He said he dropped his snow knife and he dropped his trap. He jumped on his double tracking Alpine. He jumped on his Alpine seat. Where's the mother? He said, where's the mother? He said he jumped up. He said about 50 feet away, mother was running to them.
Oh my goodness.
So my dad said he pulled out his rifle. And he shot in the air because he didn't want to shoot. He didn't want to shoot the mother.
Yeah.
Even though it's
Might
probably
need
going to
to.
attack them.
Yeah.
But he shot in the air and the mother stopped. As soon as it stopped, the cubs ran to her. So my dad and mother got on their skidoo.
Yeah.
And they drove away for a while. And they watched the mother. The mother came and bothered the traps for a little bit. Then they went along the hills and this left. But my dad said he really didn't want to shoot the mother. But he said for a second he got no choice.
Yeah.
And like he said, he knew what was happening,
Holy.
Something is up when he sees the cubs like that. So he said he stood on his seat. Said just over the hill, about 50 yards away, this mother was running to them. Said he knew what was happening. Yeah.
Well, he knew that the mother would be looking for her cubs, right?
Yeah.
How scary.
Yeah.
I would have been like, where's the mother? This was your mom?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She must have been just so shocked that two little polar bears were around her.
Yeah. So we moved to Tuck in '86, and then there's where I really started fishing a lot, hunting a lot. So I remember one fall, August of 2003, 2004, went on a seal hunt, me and my uncle and my cousins, and it was glassy out, flat calm. We left Tuck. We traveled about maybe half an hour, 40 minutes outside a place called Toka Point, out in the ocean. And all of a sudden we seen these air splashing out of the water. Big sprays, and I said, whoa, look at that, belugas, whales. All of a sudden I noticed another one there, and my uncle said, that's too big. And I said, yeah, that's right. We noticed there was bowheads. So we drove to them. All of a sudden we noticed another about 10 more air splashing. So we stopped our boats and I counted 50 bowheads coming into the coastline. And I don't know if they were fishing, because they were fishing.
Yeah.
But these bowheads were coming in. I counted 50, and there must have been 20 female ones, because there was a lot of small ones beside them. So we started following the last ones. One of the last, they were traveling together, like all 50. And a flat calm was just now, it's like swells. They were so big. So me and my uncle were following one with an 18-foot lund. And we're following one, the waves. All of a sudden, it stopped, so my uncle said, it stopped. So we stopped our kicker. The wave stopped, so my uncle said, it stopped. All of a sudden, we seen the water getting sucked in,
goodness.
getting pressured in the water. So my uncle said, watch this, the flipper's coming up in front of us, like 20 feet away. So we stopped. At that time, sorry, there's no camera, no cell phones,
Yeah,
nothing to
just
take
your
this
memories.
killer picture of killer image. And as we're watching this, and my uncle said, "Watch this, the flipper, see how big it is." So when it's coming up about 20 feet away, we seen the water. We could hear the water getting sucked in, the pressure. We could hear the all of a sudden came up. It was the blowhole in front of us. We seen like a hole this big. The side was like, it was like a rock coming up. So we both looked back. The tail is coming up behind us.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
You didn't know how fast my uncle started to kick it and we got away. We were right above it.
Yeah.
And this had to be at least 35 foot.
You must have.
Bowhead.
I would have been crying.
You know, I was a little bit chilly before that.
So you warmed right up?
Oh, gee, you know,
So, being on Banks Island, same thing. I can't remember. It's like a land Greg's dad has. Mm-hmm. We were out hunting seals, and Banks Island compared to Tuck, and Tuck you have the water, the river runoff, mm-hmm. so the water is quite cloudy, it's brown, and in Sachs Harbour the water is pure blue. It freaks me out how much I could see the seals underneath the water, but we were there seal hunting, and then we seen some things off in the distance. And we went further out than just along the coast. We went further out and we kept going, and Greg's looking with his binoculars. And for sure there were 2 bowhead whales. And Greg was like, Dad, let's go see them. And I was like, he was standing up in the boat, and I kind of grabbed his waist and I was like, I don't know if I can. And he was like, come on, Dad, they're just right there. Just 10 more minutes, we'll be able to go and see them. And then Larry's like, no, son, I don't know how to be around. I don't know how to boat around mm-hmm. the big whales, how to handle the boat. And then I have a trick. I have a trick with my husband. I say I'm cold. If I say I'm cold, he'll bring me home. So I was like, you know what? I'm really getting cold. And Larry's like, yeah, Margaret's getting cold. Let's go back to town.
You know, if we had waters like Banks Island, you know, we have the runoff from the Mackenzie River. Yes. That's why it's so sandy. Mm-hmm. And if we, you know, if we knew how close we are, we could see the bowheads, we sure would never, you know.
Well, no.
But it was so fascinating. Oh, my goodness, how these Alaskans, we were talking about it, me and my uncle, how the Alaskans hunt these. Mm-hmm. Wow, you know.
It's insane.
One bowhead could feed a community. There was 50 of them.
Have you eaten bowhead before?
No, sorry.
I
no.
have.
Wow.
I have. It's very, very similar to beluga whale. Mm-hmm. It's just a little bit chewier. Okay. But the flavor was almost the same. Mm-hmm. And it was good. I ate it and it was really good. It was, I'm so used to eating our little beluga whales and the white. And the way they cut it up too is different than the way, you know, we just cube it all. Like the way they cut it up was a little bit different.
Like you were talking about the clear water outside of Sachs Harbour. Mm-hmm. One time my dad, my parents always get the small seals. They must prefer eating young, like small seal. So we've been sinking one. I remember we were out sealing, me and my dad, Mom, and my dad been shooting one. It sunk to the bottom. And it was like this wall in the bottom of the water. Mm-hmm. You could see it on the rocks. And my mother was really sad, said, is it going to come up? My dad said, probably not. Yeah. So Mom said, I really want that seal, but it was like in the bottom. Yeah. So my dad, what we used to do is we had a long stick with a nail, mm-hmm. and they call it a seal hook, mm-hmm. like a long stick with a nail hook wrapped with mm-hmm. wire. So my dad said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook the seal hook to our anchor. We had mm-hmm. a long line. So he hooked it down with the anchor, and he hooked the seal way down there. It even took a while for him to pull it out. But he got it. It was so clear water.
Yeah, you can see the lakes. Yeah. The lakes, there are lakes underneath the water, and you could see them when you're there. But yeah, I couldn't imagine. Sea life kind of freaks me out.
You know, I tell you that effects of all the oceans do have effect in our Beaufort Sea. I believe it was mid 2000, 2004. They had a tsunami in the Atlantic Ocean, and they said it will affect the Beaufort Sea. And we don't believe in that.
We're
stuff.
so far away.
So what happened? That fall, we had many storms. Many storms in September that we'd never had before. Very
What
bad
year was
storm.
this?
Probably 2003, 2004.
I remember that.
We started having these storms.
Windstorms.
Windstorms that really eroded our shoreline. But what happened? It changed the bottom of our ocean. So the year after, we started traveling boat. We started hitting sandbars we never hit before in places we have. We started going into these little creeks that we had to, we know the route. We used to drive right into them because the bottom has changed. We started hitting again. We started hitting sandbars. We never hit in areas like that before, which is dangerous. Which is dangerous. You could lose your prop easily. You could damage your kicker. So what happened? We didn't realize it was that the high waters that now in October, it was the water froze like above actual height. So Anderson River been flooding. Like high waters. We didn't know that. We didn't realize that. So now the geese migration that came, they travel like along the coastline. Then they'll gather at Anderson River. Then they'll make their way to Banks Island. So where they rest and stop and feed, there was no more mud bars.
Yep,
it was
and
all
they
ice.
need that, yeah.
So because of all the ice buildup, all the high waters, they just stayed there so long, and they made their way along the coastline straight to Sachs Harbour. So after a while, our friends in Sachs Harbour saying, "Boy, we're seeing geese earlier than normal." And at that time, we were not getting much geese along the Mackenzie River. So at that time, we had to travel to Mason River, which was 7 hours away. And my dad told me that we might have to leave earlier because we usually leave May 28th to like June 2nd, June 3rd to hit the main run at Mason River, catch the geese that are piling into Anderson River, Wood Bay area, they call the place, Wood Bay. So with all the high waters that, like in the fall time that froze, all the mud bars where they stopped, there was no more place for the geese to actually settle. So they just kept going. So when we got to Mason, where we were actually perfect timing or a day early, they were gone. So they changed, that actual times changed like that. The geese traveled that, even though the water went back to normal, the geese still traveled earlier than normal. So it caused us to have to change because we traveled 7 hours and we couldn't believe there was no geese. The geese were already nearly in Banks Island.
Banks Island, yeah.
So it was really, we couldn't believe how climate change, how this thing was so, how it affected us.
Yeah. I wonder if that had anything to do with how, you remember there used to always be blue herring in Tuck? It's not the same. Like, I remember my Nanak and Dadak going out to Dupcook and setting blue herring nets, and they would make so much bouchak. And from the early 2000s to now, I don't see it the same anymore.
The climate change, because I'm working and the only time I get off now is been getting off just to hunt geese. I wish I went all year round, but it's really hard working and trying to do that all year round. So I just use my time for spring geese hunting. So 20 years ago, we'll stay out till right end of May. Just about June 2nd, I'll go home with snow. Will be along the coastline. There'll be water 20, 30 feet away, but it's just the banks melting. There's actually ice underneath. So usually at nighttime the water will go down and you could drive across to the main ice. And
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
It's like a floor. You head home.
Yeah.
But now, 17, 18 years ago, we started noticing it's reaching plus 10, plus 15.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2009, I believe, 2010, it reached plus 20 in May.
2010 was a hot year.
So it was really bad for us because I was only hour and a half away from town.
Mm-hmm.
I store my geese for the whole time I've been there in a snowbank.
Mm-hmm.
Keep them cool. All our snowbanks were melting.
Yeah.
So it was plus 20.
Mm-hmm.
I had no camera, but I had my youngest boy was hunting around with just a T-shirt on and just sweating, and we're trying to keep our geese cool, and it was so warm.
Yeah.
You know, it was crazy, and so that we had to rush home early, and it's been like that for the past few years. Finally, this couple of years ago, it went back a little bit back to normal.
Colder. Mm-hmm.
So I usually set a date, and then I'll get off work.
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, I believe, I went out. I got the 10th of May off. It blew. It blew for 2 weeks, snowstorm, and blew.
Yeah.
And it only got good day after I went home on the 23rd. So I think I got 30 geese in a week and a half, and I stayed there the whole time.
Yeah.
Because I'm out there, and people were worried about Jay and calling me on cell phone. You know, it's blowing. You're okay. You know.
Yeah.
This shoveling snowbanks. My kids were making snowmen and igloos in May.
In May.
It was kind of hilarious.
In 2010, it was so hot. I remember I had spent in 2008 and 2009. I grew up in Tuk, where it's always windy. And in 2008, 2009, in the summer times, I spent them on Banks Island, and it's cold there. It's not as warm as Tuk. It's cold in the summertime. You still need your winter jacket when you're going out. Yeah. And anyways, it was so hot for my Uncle Jumbo, my Auntie Glenna's wedding. Mm-hmm. Here it was hot. Here it was like everybody was suffering. And then I went to Tuk, enjoying that breeze. It was so hot though. And I came back here for 2 days, and I was going to spend the whole summer. We had the heat wave that year. It was like 38 all the time. I booked it to Sachs Harbour, but it was really hot there. A polar bear washed up on shore, perfectly healthy. And I remember they checked up on it, and they did sampling and stuff, and they said it was a healthy bear. And the only thing that the locals figured that it must have had a heat stroke because it was just so hot.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was 2010. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that summer. It was like just a tank top driving on a four-wheeler just to cool off because it would just be hot out on the land.
Living in Tuk, we did a lot of fishing. Mm-hmm. My dad, as soon as the ice would freeze in October, he'll walk out with an axe, and I'll walk behind him. And if it's one chop, it's a little bit too thin, and with this detouring, we'll put a net out in the harbor. Mm-hmm. And he told me, just don't walk around, stay beside me, and then we'll put a net out there. Mm-hmm. And I remember though one summer, I think it was mid-August, it was a beautiful sunny day. It was really windy that day. There was like white caps in the harbor, and then my dad, Edgar Kuraka, called me and said, Jay, I'm not feeling well, can you check my net at the point? I said, oh yeah. So me and my cousin Emsley jumps in my our parents' brown car, and we go to my dad's, and he said, yeah, there's a 16-foot aluminum boat down there with oars, you know, and I'm not much of an oar, you know, there's a kicker there, a boat, we never did it much, but for sure, you know, help my dad. So I grabbed the pail, and I went down, and I noticed two loom boats, and one was hauled way up, one was near the beach. So I grabbed the oars from that one other boat hauled up, and I put it near other loom boat, threw the pail in. I just had runners, and I put on a life jacket, and I told my cousin Emsley to meet me at the point with the car. I'm going to go. And I remember it was windy side wind, and there's white caps in the harbor. So I jumped in and started oaring backwards, and I was really going good, oaring away. I got in the middle of the harbor, and start going, looking around, and check on my cousin once in a while. Sometimes I'll turn one side, getting used to oaring. And after I was oaring, all of a sudden I shifted over like this. All of a sudden I heard this little noise, a hissing noise, and I started oaring. When I looked down, water was pouring under my seat. When I looked down, there was a big hole under the seat where it was supposed to be riveted to the seat. So I was still quite a ways from towards the point, and I looked towards the side, so I grabbed one oar and I turned, and I started oaring full out, fast as I could in the water. As soon as every time I oar, the water will push back to the back, so I had to put my feet up on the edge, and I was just oaring. I was yelling at my cousin, "I'm sinking." So he got out of the car, he started running along the beach trying to find a boat.
Yeah.
Only boat was, at the time, was Clarence Mangalanes, which was way past my dad, so he kind of young boy trying to rush, running around, trying to run for a boat, and I'm really paddling, and all of a sudden the boat started lifting because the water is filling up in the back, and I was still quite a ways, and I was yelling at him that I'm sinking. Yeah. My cousin started laughing. He said every time I oar, the boat will lift up. So every time I oar, the boat will lift up. I don't know how much paddling. He said once in a while your paddle hit the water. Panicking so much. Anyways, I got about 30 feet from the water in the boat, and the boat was filling up. I'll oar, splash the water up. I'll oar, splash the water out because it was so full. The boat was starting to level off, and I knew whatever level off, I'm going to sink. And I was sitting in the water on my seat, and I was getting very tired. When I look, I was 15 feet away, and I know there's a cut bank there. I know I'm going to probably... I'm seriously, I don't know how to swim. So, okay, how am I going to swim? Am I going to dive in? Or, So I tried again. I couldn't move the boat now. And when I jumped in, I thought I held on to it, so in case I float out or something. I jumped in, I landed on the ground up to here.
Oh my goodness.
So I walked out of the water. My cousin was just laughing. I said, why never took the car and went to go get a boat? And he said he was laughing so much. Anyways, I looked, there was a big crack at the bottom. Oh my goodness, my dad, I was saying, what the heck? I went to my dad, he was watching, he said, what's wrong with you, Jay? You took the oars out of the good boat. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, my back hurts. So crazy. Long ago, I'm just going to say the point looked very different than the point does now. Yeah, it used to be really wide. Like, I remember playing at the point. Mm-hmm. So you probably could have drove on there with a vehicle.
Oh, yeah. Then.
Oh, if only we had, like, video, like, phones. You could record that.
Thank goodness there was none. Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy you decided to come on the show again and tell stories. These are one of my favorite episodes where I get to sit and listen to actual stories and create a visual. Yeah, you're full of amazing stories. You're a really good storyteller.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you for coming and being on the show. Hopefully one day you can come and be on again. You're always welcome.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you all for tuning in and listening to Stories with Jason
Nasogaluak
from Tuktoyaktuk, and we'll see you in the next one. That's good.